George Soros has just destroyed a once trusted American institution. With a single move, he's cornered the media and bypassed regulations, posing a real threat to democracy. The truth will shock you.
Mr. President, last week, President Biden, I wish him well, gave his farewell address to America. He said a number of things, but one in particular got my attention. He warned America about, quote, his words, not mine, quote, a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of very few ultra-wealthy people. President Biden went on to say, and I quote again, today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead, end quote. Now, I don't know who President Biden was talking about, but I know one particular circumstance about which I'm going to speak that fits his warning. Again, I don't know if the circumstance I'm about to describe is what President Biden meant, but if the shoe fits, wear it, Cinderella. Let me cut to the chase. Mr. George Soros is an oligarch. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. He's a friend of President Biden's. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, President Biden just gave him, I think, the highest civilian honor that a president can give to a civilian, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Mr. George Soros is buying WWL AM radio in New Orleans. Let me say that again. That may not mean much to you, Mr. President, but it means a lot to my people in Louisiana. Mr. George Soros is buying WWL AM radio in New Orleans. WWL AM radio is practically an institution in my state. It's been around since 1922. 1922. Over 100 years. It's a clear channel. It's what the communications experts call a clear channel Class A station. Its transmitter power output is about 50,000 watts. That's a lot, folks. That's the maximum for commercial AM stations in the United States. It's the lead station on the New Orleans Saints radio network. It's an important station. And Mr. George Soros is buying it. Now, what does that mean, and how did this happen? WWL is owned by a national company called Odyssey. A-U-D-A-C-Y, Odyssey. Odyssey has about 220 radio stations nationwide, one of which, of course, is WWL. Second largest radio network in America. It reaches, I think, 45 different markets throughout our country, Mr. President. 165 million Americans. It's huge. Odyssey borrowed too much money. They took on too much debt. They took on about $1.9 billion worth of debt, and they couldn't service that debt with their revenues. So what did they do? They did what many other corporations do when they can't service their debt. They went into what's called Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Not Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is when they liquidate the company. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is when a company goes into bankruptcy in front of a bankruptcy judge and says, "Judge, we want to get all of our creditors and debtors together and restructure our cash flow and our debt so we can come out of this bankruptcy a surviving entity." They went into Chapter 11 with a bankruptcy plan. Mr. George Soros immediately pounced. He, of that $1.9 billion in debt, he bought about $415 million of it. Cash on the barrelhead. Paid 50 cents on the dollar. One of the tenets of the reorganization was that all the current shareholders would be wiped out. The new creditors would assume equity positions in the company. I know that sounds complicated, and it can be, but really what it means is that the bondholders, one of which is Mr. Soros after he bought $415 million worth of debt, became a shareholder. And Mr. Soros is now the largest single shareholder in Odyssey radio stations, including WWL AM in New Orleans, an institution. Now, in America, you can't just go do this.
What you just witnessed was an extraordinary revelation about the growing concentration of power in the hands of a very few individuals. For those who still believe in the ideal of equal access to information, this should serve as a wake-up call. What Soros has done here is no mere business deal. It's a blatant grab for influence. By purchasing one of the most important radio stations in the country, WWL AM in New Orleans, and taking control of over 200 other stations, he is now positioned to reshape the narrative in an entire region. But this isn't just about one radio station. It's about the broader implications for free speech and media ownership in America. The truth is clear. When billionaires like Soros can manipulate the system and bypass critical regulatory processes, the very fabric of our democracy is at risk. Let's break down what happened. Soros, a wealthy financier, used his immense wealth to buy up a staggering $415 million worth of debt from a company called Odyssey, which owns WWL AM and other stations. Odyssey was drowning in debt, $1.9 billion worth, to be exact. Instead of letting the system play out, Soros swooped in, using his financial power to buy up a significant portion of the company, thus becoming the largest shareholder. This move, while legally permissible, is highly problematic from an ethical standpoint. The FCC, the body meant to protect American airwaves, essentially green-lighted this transaction without proper investigation or public scrutiny. The decision was made by a 3-2 vote, with all 3 Democrats on the commission approving the deal, despite significant pushback from Republicans and public interest groups. The media landscape in America is already oversaturated with concentrated ownership, and now we have one individual controlling access to the airwaves that belong to the American people. This is not a free market. This is an oligarchy taking root right in front of us. For those who still don't believe it, consider the role the FCC was supposed to play. Its mission is clear: to make sure our airwaves are used responsibly and ethically. Yet, in this case, it failed. The federal government should be ensuring that no single entity can control the flow of information that reaches millions of Americans. But they've dropped the ball. How did this happen? Why was this deal fast-tracked and approved without due diligence? This wasn't just about Soros buying radio stations. It was about using his financial power to manipulate public opinion and influence political outcomes. By controlling these stations, Soros is now in a position to shape the information Americans receive, particularly in a highly polarized political climate. Does this remind you of the dangers of media monopolies? When a single entity, or a handful of them, controls most of the media, the public is no longer informed. They are manipulated. And we are already seeing the consequences, from biased news reports to corporate agendas being pushed through without oversight. This case goes beyond just a corporate deal. It's about who controls the narrative and the dangers of foreign influence in American media. Soros, a billionaire who has poured millions of dollars into radical political causes, is now positioned to use these stations to push his agenda, which has already been revealed to be anti-American on multiple fronts. His beliefs that America is the main obstacle to a stable world, and his vocal admiration for China's authoritarian system should raise alarm bells for all of us. He's spent millions to elect prosecutors who believe violent criminals are the true victims, not those who suffer from their crimes. These same prosecutors are supported by Soros's money and ideology, which consistently pushes the idea that America's law enforcement system is the problem. What does all of this mean for the average American? It means that your access to unbiased, factual news is being slowly chipped away by those with the resources to control it. The media landscape is becoming increasingly centralized, and fewer people will have the ability to push back against it. We are no longer living in a time where the American people have a strong, independent voice in their media. Now, it's about who has the most money and the most influence. It's time to question the very structure that allows individuals like Soros to accumulate so much power over our lives. This is not a free society. It's one where the powerful few call the shots while the rest of us are left with a skewed version of reality. And it doesn't stop here. Soros and his associates are already taking steps to expand their control, and the media is not asking the hard questions. Why? Because they've already been bought off. Now, we must ask ourselves, how much longer will we stand idly by as our most cherished democratic institutions are hijacked by billionaires? What are we willing to do to take back control of our airwaves, our information, and our freedom of speech? The battle is far from over, but we must start by holding those in power accountable, starting with the FCC and their shady approval of this deal. It's time for action. We cannot afford to let this continue. No one is above the law. The Constitution was built to protect us from this kind of unchecked power, but it requires each of us to stay vigilant. We must continue to fight for transparency, for fairness, and for the rights of every American to access free and unbiased information. We must not let the oligarchs win. Share this video, subscribe, and stay loud, because if we don't speak up now, we will lose our right to be heard forever.